good morning to everyone. I, Pradnyanika, on behalf of SAP CRNTS IIT Bombay, take this opportunity to welcome you all to today's webinar on High Resolution Liquid Chromatography Orbit Track Mass Spectrometer, titled Delenting Small Molecule Analysis through Ultra High Resolution Orbit Track Mass Spectrometry. At the outset, I will provide overview of SAP, brief introduction of today's speaker, Dr. Saravanan Kumar, followed by his presentation on the topic, and at the last, question and answer session. I will request everyone to post their questions with their name in question and answers box, which will be answered towards the end of the session. Sophisticated Analytical Instrument Facility, also known as SAP, was inaugurated by our late ex-Prime Minister Shri Morarji Desai in 1976. Project CRNTS was also started in 2006 with initial funding from DST. In 2008, SAP and CRNTS got merged under one umbrella headed by one in charge. Professor Anil Kotantharil is currently leading our SAP CRNTS department at IIT Bombay. 16 major equipments are under SAP and 5 under CRNTS. CRNTS wing, academic wing, also has PhD programs. 80 plus students guided by around 25 faculty members of other departments. In financial year 18-19, more than 2,400 users have registered and more than 20,800 samples were drawn. Department of Science and Technology DST has set up sophisticated analytical instrument facilities SAP in different parts of India. The main objective of setting this facility were to provide guidance in acquisition of data using sophisticated instruments. The main objective of setting up this facility were to provide guidance in acquisition of data using sophisticated instruments. SAP at IIT Bombay has several analytical instruments and provides measurement services to IIT Bombay users and to users from other colleges, universities, national laboratories, and various industries as well. DST has funded following instruments, out of which 3 are liquid chromatography mass spectrometers, which has been highlighted. Out of these 3, 2 of them are high resolution mass spectrometer, QTOF and Orbitrap. These are the instrument which comes under central facility funded by IIT Bombay. Dr. Mayuri Gandhi is in charge of all mass spectrometers housed at SAP CRNTS. These are the photos of all those mass spectrometers which were mentioned earlier. For more details about SAP CRNTS, please visit our website sap.iitb.ac.in. On this website, you can get details of our instrument, short principles, and you can also get the details of how to register your samples. It gives me great pleasure to inform that in spite of 17 SAPs funded by DSTs, we have users and researchers coming to our SAP from different parts of India and Nepal. SAP is not just the center for research, but we also encourage people to visit our centers to help them understand and demonstrate how our facility works. We encourage visitors from industries and universities also. We also have LinkedIn page of SAP at IIT Bombay, and we would be happy to connect with you on LinkedIn. We have in all 12 webinars series lined up in coming following weeks on different topics. You can find the details of upcoming webinars on our LinkedIn page also. I once again take this opportunity of thanking everyone for joining today's webinar. All our team members would be happy to welcome you to SAP CRNTS and help you with your research and development work. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Dr. Saravanan Kumar. Dr. Saravanan Kumar is currently associated with Thermo Fisher Scientific India Private Limited. He has gained his initial training at the Proteomics and Structural Biological Division Institute of Genomics and Integrative Biology, New Delhi. He has done his PhD from International Center of Genetic Engineering and Biotechnology, New Delhi. He has more than 11 years of experience in the field of mass spectrometry, protein biochemistry, and analytical techniques. He has co-authored 20 plus international publications. He is currently leading the team specialized in biopharma, proteomics, and small molecules metabolomics. He is also working with leading industries and academic institutes for developing LC-HRMS methods and workflow solutions for challenging problems. Now I take this opportunity to request Dr. Saravanan Kumar to present his slide to everyone. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Pragya. Good morning, all. Thanks for joining today's session. Like as Pragya rightly pointed out, today's session will be on small molecules. I mean the metabolomics or the metabolite analysis perspective using ultra high resolution Orbitrap mass spec. Currently, we are in slide 3. So the contents of my today's session are briefly plotted out here in this particular slide. I'll introduce the little bit of a basics about mass spectrometry. We'll also talk about a little bit on the working principle behind the so-called high resolution mass spec mass analyzer, the different types of Orbitrap analyzers. Following that, I'll briefly introduce all the different types of hybrid, tribrid Orbitrap mass spec that are currently available in the market, right? So following that, we'll get into the actual context, the small molecule aspect. I'll highlight the importance of resolution, the mass accuracy, and the so-called isotope fine structure elucidation. So all these three important parameters are regularly being employed, whether it could be a simple a synthetic small molecule or the so-called metabolomics aspect. So we'll go through some of the real-time results. I'll also try to touch upon the data analysis aspect, right? So to begin with, I'm sure most of you must be familiar with the pictures that is put in this particular slide. So these are the pioneers or the scientists who have contributed to the so-called mass spectrometry field. Among them, I'd like to point out these two gentlemen. The one that there in the center, he is Koshi Tanaka, and this is Professor John Bennett Fenn. So these two guys were actually awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in the year 2002 for MALDI and electrospray ionization principles. And as you must be knowing, these two are the major ionization principles that have been routinely employed globally for both small and biomolecule aspect. So apart from them, you can see these two gentlemen on the right-hand side bottom panel, Professor Demelt and Professor Wolfgang Paul. So they were awarded the Nobel Prize in the year 1989 for ion trapping principles, right? So the so-called mass spectrometer, they can be classified based on various criteria. Like it could be the choice of ionization. You call them MALDI based, ESI based, electron ionization based, or chemical ionization. So these are different ionization principles. Similarly, you can also classify an instrument based on the analyzer component. You call them TOF analyzers, time of flight, or the trap based analyzers. Among traps, there are three major classification, right? The Paul's trap, Penning's trap, and the Kingdon trap. Paul's trap has been named against Professor Wolfgang Paul. It's nothing but the quadruple traps. Penning's trap, it is named against Professor Penning. So Penning was the postdoc supervisor of Professor Demelt. So it is nothing but the FTICR, Fourier transform ion cyclotron resonance mass spectrometer. The third one is the Kingdon trap. Kingdon is basically it is a theory which was published in the year 1923. So that particular theory was worked out subsequently by multiple research groups. Finally, this gentleman, the one that you are seeing in the bottom panel, so he is Professor Alexander Makarov. He took that theory and then improvised it, reinvented it, and then renamed that to be Orbitrap. So Kingdon traps are nothing but the Orbitrap, right? This is just to briefly give you an introduction about the different kinds of major mass spec principles that have been used for both small and biomolecules. Now let's go to the next slide, slide 5. This particular slide gives you an overview about what is mass spectrometry means, or what does the so-called mass spectrometer does, right? So mass spectrometry, it's nothing but the analytical technique, and it is based on the motion of charged particles within an electric or a magnetic field. So ultimately it aids in the measurements of M by Z. So that's what we call mass spectrometry. And how do we arrive at the mass? Based on this particular formula. So if you know the M and the Z factor, I mean the mass and the charge factor, we will be able to arrive, we'll be able to measure the molecular weight or the molecular mass of the given sample or the given compound. And the bottom panel, it shows the schematics of most of the commercially available mass spec platforms, right? So now let's go to the next slide. So this particular slide, it explains the essentially the different types of mass spectrometers and the different kinds of front-end analytical techniques. Like it is not just the mass spec, right? You always need to have a front-end analytical technique that would really benefit or increase the efficiency, the functional applications of a given mass spec. So that is where LC, the liquid chromatography, gas chromatography, capillary electrophoresis, all these things comes into picture. So we have the front-end interaction techniques. Following that, we have the source of ionization. That's where I talked about MALDI, ESI, electron ionization, and fast atom bombardment. Apart from that, we do have the different kinds of analyzers. So this particular thing, it shows the schematics of the mass spectrometers that are currently being utilized. So among this thing, today we will be talking about this Orbitrap platform, the Orbitrap mass analyzer. Now let's go to the next slide. Currently we are in slide 7. This particular slide explains the working principle behind the so-called Orbitrap mass analyzer. So I will not invest too much of a time, just for the benefit of the audience and for scientific curiosity. If you see, there is a barrel-like structure, right? So this structure is the Orbitrap component. If you can see, there is a gray color region, this outer region. So this outer region is the electrode or the outer electrode. So the outer electrode essentially functions as the detector. And then you see a central spindle-like structure, the orange one. So that is the central electrode. Apart from that, you do see some rings, right? 3 different rings, color rings. So the 3 different color rings, they correspond to the 3 different ion populations. As you must be seeing, these ion populations are moving around the central electrode, right? This movement, it is occurring in a fixed path, right? That is point number 1. And they are moving at certain frequency. So this frequency generates an image current. So that's what you see here, this graph. The image current is later transformed using FT algorithm, and ultimately the plot that you get is the mass spectral plot. So this is the working principle behind the Orbitrap analyzer. One important thing is, if you see, the ion populations are moving around the central electrode at certain frequency in a fixed path. That fixed path is nothing but orbit. That's why it's called Orbitrap, orbital trapping of ions, Orbitrap, as simple as that. All right. So this movement that has been exhibited, that you are actually seeing currently in the slide, it is the transient movement, right? This transient movement directly translates or corresponds to the resolution of a given ion or a given analyte. So these are just for your information. In case if you are interested, you can always post your queries, or we can discuss at the end of the session. All right. So currently now we have moved to slide 8. So this particular slide, it explains the head-to-head comparison of 2 commercially available mass spectrometers. In fact, if you would have listened to Pragya, she said like you guys have 2 HRMS stationed at SAFE facility. So one is a QTOF, the other one is the Orbitrap. Now what is the major difference? So that is what has been essentially plotted in this particular graph. The x-axis of this graph corresponds to the precursor ion flow, number of ions or ion populations per second. All right. So that's what we say 1E3, 1E4. I mean, in much simpler words, 1000, 10,000, 1 lakh, or so on and so forth. Right. So this corresponds to the ion flow, the concentration of the ions per second into the mass spectrometer. The y-axis, it corresponds to the spectra per second. Now let me explain the relation between x-axis and y-axis. That will help you understand what this red color one denotes and what this green color one denotes. The relation is that precursor ion flow. So you need to inject as low as 1E3 or say 1E4 amount of ion population to generate this much amount of spectra per second. Whereas in case of TOF instruments, you need to almost inject double. So that's the relation. So here essentially we are trying to comment on the transmission. What is the level of transmission that can be attained within a given mass spectrometer? So having said that, Orbitrap shows higher transmission efficiency as compared to QTOF. You have to increase, you need to inject literally more amount of ion population so that you can increase the transmission. So that is not the case with Orbitrap. In much simpler words, this can be directly contributed to the identification of low abundant species. That is what is very important in both metabolomics as well as proteomics aspects, right? So now let's go to the next slide. So in this particular slide, in the earlier slide, I had explained to you about the transmission. So this particular slide, it corresponds to the signal strength. So all that I want you guys to do is try to have a critical look into both these graphs. And let's come from right to left, right? So in the right hand side, this corresponds to the injected ions per second. The left hand side corresponds to the actually detected ions per second. So in Orbitrap, assume this pink one corresponds to Orbitrap, the pink or the purple, and the dark blue that you see corresponds to the orthogonal TOF or the QTOF instruments. Now, if you see here, they are injecting approximately 100 ions per second, and they are able to almost detect all of the 100 ions. So the amount of ions injected versus detected, it is almost nearly 80 to 100%. So there is hardly any signal loss, or in other words, you tend to get much stronger signal in Orbitrap as compared to TOF instruments. In TOF instruments, on one hand, you inject more, at the same time, you tend to lose more, right? Almost 10,000 ions are being injected. However, we are able to detect only somewhere around 100 to 1000. So there is almost 10 to 100 fold loss in the signal. So that is what is being depicted in these two graphs, right? So now let's go to the next slide. This particular slide gives you an overview about the so-called different Orbitrap analyzers. So the so-called standard Orbitrap that you see in the left-hand side panel, and the high field or the ultra high field Orbitrap, the one that you see in the right-hand side panel. Essentially what they have done, they have decreased the size of the trap and increased the central electric volt potential from 3.5 to 5 kilovolt. So all these improvisations has been made so that you get better mass accuracy and faster scan speed. So that is the logic, right? In case if you are interested, we can discuss about these things in the end of the session. All right. So this particular slide, it basically tabulates the different Orbitrap analyzers. I mean, from top to bottom, it is standard Orbitrap to ultra high field Orbitrap. I mean 3.5 kilovolt in combination with D30, diameter 30. To 5 kilovolt, diameter 20, right? So how does this matter? What does it translate into? If you can see in the standard Orbitraps, you can attain 1,40,000 resolution at 1500 milliseconds. Whereas in the high field or the ultra high field Orbitrap, you can almost attain double the resolution, 2,40,000 resolution, almost within 1/3 the time. So here you can get it within 500 milliseconds. So that is the logic, right? So now let's go to the next slide. And this is how the Orbitrap looks like. Just to give you an idea of what is the size of the Orbitrap. So this is the standard Orbitrap, and this one is the high field or the ultra high field Orbitrap. And this particular slide, it shows the schematics of different Orbitraps. From left to right and from top to bottom, we have the benchtop Q Exactive instruments. So this is what you have it in the safe facility. And then this is the flow standing one, the hybrid Orbitrap instrument and the tribrid instruments. The difference is that in this instrument, you have quadrupole and the Orbitrap, right? Whereas in this instrument, the one that you see in the right-hand side panel, right-hand side top panel, you have the ion trap and the Orbitrap. In the bottom one, we have quadrupole, ion trap and the Orbitrap. That's the difference, the number of functional analyzers within a given instrument. If it has two functional analyzers, we call it hybrid instruments, top panel. And if it has three functional analyzers, quadrupole, ion trap and Orbitrap, we call it tribrid instruments, as simple as that. So what does it mean? It means this particular instrument has much more analytical capabilities. It could be multiple fragmentations, or it could be sequential fragmentations, MSN. All these kind of an add-on analytical features are available in tribrid. So that is the difference, fine. So currently we are in slide 14. So here what I have done is I have essentially highlighted the two recently launched Orbitrap instrument, Exploris and the Eclipse. So this is just for your information. And this is how the instruments looks like in real time. Right. Now let us look into this particular slide. So this is an important slide wherein I am trying to highlight the different kinds of fragmentation techniques, fragmentation principles that are possible within the tribrid Orbitrap instruments. So it is possible to do CID, collision induced dissociation. It happens in the ion trap. And then we have HCD, high energy collision dissociation. It happens in ion routing multipole. We do have ETD, electron transfer dissociation. So it also happens in the ion trap. So these kind of multiple fragmentation techniques are really beneficial when we are trying to analyze analytically challenging molecules. All of the given molecule, you cannot simply fragment with one fragmentation principle, right? You may not get the required information. I mean the spectral fragmentation information. So that is where multiple fragmentation techniques really helps. And when it comes to the benchtop Orbitrap instrument, so these two are possible: ISD, in-source dissociation, and HCD, high energy collision dissociation, right? So now let's go to the next slide. So in the subsequent slides, I will be talking about morely on the small molecule or the metabolite metabolomics aspect. First thing is the resolution aspect. Why is resolution important? So currently we are in slide 20. In this particular slide, I am trying to show you the benefit of resolution in resolving two near isobaric analytes. So in this case, it is acetyl ornithine and arginine. If you look into this particular numbers critically, they are differing at the second and the third decimal place. In much simpler words, the mass difference is only 65 ppm. So what if a scientist or a user tries to analyze this kind of a molecule, arginine and acetyl ornithine at a lower resolution, 15,000. So this is the kind of spectral plot that you get, the yellow color one. Now let's increase the resolution to 30,000, 60, 1,20,000, 2,40,000. Different color codes corresponds to different resolutions that were employed to attain the spectral plot of the same sample. Now you can, I'm sure you will be able to visualize the benefit of resolution in resolving near isobaric analyte. From a scientific standpoint, scientists always say we do have very good chromatographic methods in place wherein we will be able to separate chromatographically these kind of isobaric analytes. But what if it is not an analyte and if it is a background? So that is what is being explained in the next slide. Now we have moved from slide 20 to slide 21. So in this particular slide, what I am trying to show is the logic remains the same. Benefit of resolution in resolving near isobaric instead of analyte. In this case, it is a background ion, right? So you simply cannot neglect background ion interference. And what if a background ion is isobaric, near isobaric to your analyte of interest? In this case, it is phthalate. Phthalate is nothing but it's a common leaching substance. You get it from the solvent bottles, you get it from the tubings, kind of stuff. So in this case, a phthalate shares a near isobaric mass with an estradiol, which is the analyte. So you simply cannot neglect, you simply cannot have a chromatographic method in place wherein you will be able to separate a background from the analyte. That is not possible. So that is where resolution is important. So whether it is resolving a near isobaric analyte or a background, resolution plays a very important role. All right. So let's move to the next slide, slide 22. In this particular slide, I am essentially showing you how the data looks like. I mean, the earlier slide looks like in the real-time aspect. So the bottom panel is the data that is acquired at lower resolution, 10,000, and the top panel is 1 lakh resolution. So here you can see there is a very clear peak, XIZ of the analyte, which is not being suppressed by the phthalate ions. So that is the logic, right? All right. Now, does these things really get employed in real time? Yes, indeed. So just to define that particular point, so this particular table is from a published literature. So here what I am trying to show is these are different drug molecules. They are almost near isobaric. I mean, the mass difference is at the second or the third decimal place. So this is where resolution will play an important role in resolving these kind of near isobaric species at MS1 level, precursor level. Let's go to the next logic. The next thing is the mass accuracy. All right. So currently we are in slide 25. If you can see here, this particular slide, I have the right hand side panel. I have put a mass spectral plot of folic acid. The molecular weight is 442. Now in the left hand side panel, there is a table. What if a user tries to calculate the number of possible chemical formula combinations for this given molecular weight 442 with a mass tolerance of 0.1 Dalton? With a mass tolerance of 0.1 Dalton, you get 300 odd combinations. The minute the user reduces the mass tolerance, the stringency, from 0.1 Dalton to 2 ppm, the number of combinations drastically comes down from 300 to just 2 combinations. So this is a direct benefit of having or attaining high mass accurate information, right? That is what is being shown in this particular slide. Now let's go to the next slide. So in this slide, we are currently in slide 26. What I'm trying to show you is, so assume this is a chromatographic peak. Instead of putting a Gaussian peak, I have put individual spectral data points. Every line that you see here is a spectral data point, right? The x-axis is iteration time in minute. What I'm trying to show is this particular analyte. In this case, it is creatine. So it is eluting from 0.87 to 0.92 minute. Across the given chromatographic peak, each and every spectral data point, the mass accuracy is less than 1 ppm. So this is where a choice of technical platform is very important. You need to rely on platforms like Orbitrap, which can ensure mass accuracy at each and every spectral data point. What if the instrument is not able to sustain mass accuracy on a given Gaussian peak? In such cases, the single peak might look like as a doublet peak. A single peak might look like harboring an interference peak. Therefore, as a scientist, as a user, you end up into an ambiguity. Is it one metabolite or is something else? Am I getting some sort of an interference? Can it be an isotopic interference from some other molecule? So you end up in some sort of an ambiguity. So therefore, you will not be able to identify the molecule at all. So that sort of ambiguity is never a concern if you are employing an Orbitrap kind of an instrument. So that is what has been essentially shown in this particular slide, right? So now let's go to the next slide, slide 27. So in this particular slide, what I am trying to show is the x-axis is molecular weight in Daltons. The y-axis is the mass accuracy. Irrespective of the molecular weight, whether it is low molecular weight or high molecular weight, the instrument is able to sustain, deliver good mass accuracy. That is what has been shown in this particular slide. All right. So far we had seen MS1 level information, precursor mass accuracy. So this particular slide, what I am trying to show is this instrument can also deliver good resolution and mass accuracy at MS level. So that is what is very important when you are trying to confirm the structure of a given metabolite using MS fragmentation information. So this particular slide shows the spectral plot of uric acid. So you can see precursor mass accuracy at the same time subsequent fragment mass accuracy. So these things will help you in getting very good structural annotation. And this is equally important when we are trying to handle unknown molecules, unknown compounds, right? All right. Now, how does these things, how does all these logic gets employed, gets extrapolated? So that is what is being shown in this particular slide. So if you can see here, I have listed out different drugs, basically amphetamines and new amphetamine related drugs. So here, wherever you see a mass, right, 208 or 192, so those are drug molecules that share isobaric mass. It is not near isobaric, it is isobaric. The difference between near isobaric and isobaric is that near isobaric, you will be able to see a mass difference at second or the third decimal place. Whereas isobaric, you don't see any mass difference, even up to third or the fourth decimal place. Now let's see how to employ mass spec to resolve these kind of ambiguity. Now let's go to the next slide. Yeah, so this particular slide, it shows the masses of all of the isobaric drug molecules. So the isobaric drug molecules are being encircled either in purple or blue. Now let's move to the next slide. We'll see how to resolve them. So in this particular slide, if you can see left hand side panel and right hand side panel, these are isobaric species, right? They have the same chemical formula combination and same MS1 data. You cannot discriminate based on MS1. So this is where you need to fragment them and you can discriminate based on the fragments. So the fragmentation information will able to discriminate these two isobaric species, right? Now let's go to the next slide. Next slide, essentially I am explaining the same. So there it was a 208 drug, here it is a 192 drug. So in both the cases, we are employing MS2 level mass accuracy and resolution to discriminate or differentiate isobaric molecules, right? So now let's go to the next slide. Currently, we are in slide 35. This particular slide, what I have done is I have essentially listed out the elements, the name of the elements, their mass, and their percentage abundance of their isotopes. Whether it could be hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, or the major elements that corresponds to the structure of any small molecule or a biomolecule, and their corresponding isotopic abundance. So this is important to elucidate the structure of a given molecule. So now I'll tell you how that happens. Let's go to the next slide. Currently, we are in slide 36. Slide 36, it shows the isotopic distribution of methionine, right? Try to have a critical look. What I'm going to do is, in the next mouse click, we are essentially zooming in C13, the second isotope, right? The second isotope is now being acquired at a lower resolution, 15,000. Let us increase the resolution to 30, 60, 1,20,000, 2,40,000. Why am I doing this? Why are we analyzing or acquiring the spectral plot of the second isotope? We are doing this for this particular sake. If you can see now, at higher resolution, as high as 1,20,000, we are able to get the isotopic distribution plot of this second isotopic peak. This will in turn help you in confirming the structure of this particular molecule, methionine. So this is called isotope fine structure elucidation, right? Let's go to the next slide. How does these things get employed? So just to explain in real time, yes, there are molecules. That is what has been shown in this particular slide. These are the isobaric drug molecules wherein it shares exactly the same mass, isobaric mass. No difference even at the third or the fourth decimal place, right? How are we doing it? We are essentially doing it by using the isotope information. The top panel corresponds to the isotope cluster, measured isotope cluster. The bottom one corresponds to the theoretically calculated, simulated isotope cluster of this given drug molecules. So as a user, you will be comparing this isotope cluster information, right? So that is what has been shown in these two slides for these two drug molecules, essentially, right? So once you arrive at this so-called calculated measured, what are we trying to compare? We are trying to compare the relative isotope abundance of calculated versus measured. That will help you to authentically annotate or identify a given molecule based on the isotopic relative abundance. As simple as that. Right. So in this particular slide, in fact, in the subsequent slide, I'll tell you how this so-called isotope fine structure happens. Try to have a critical look at this particular mass, 197. Here I have plotted the isotope abundance of this particular molecule. Let us zoom in this C12, the monoisotopic mass, right? So this is the measured one, top one, and the bottom one is the calculated one. This is of M+0, the first isotope. Now let us go to the second isotope, M+1. So in M+1, we get information about C13 abundance, N15 abundance, and certain cases, even deuterium abundance, if it is radioactive kind of stuff. Now let's go to the next slide. It's M+2, the third isotope. Again, we are able to elucidate the isotopic abundance of the third isotopes. Now it is the fourth one, M+3. So this is what we call so-called isotope fine structure information, isotope fine structure measurement. So these things will help you to authentically elucidate, identify a given molecule. So this is what we do. We either do it based on MS1, employing mass resolution and accuracy, or we employ MSMS, again by employing accuracy and resolution. Third, we are also employing isotope fine structure. So these are the three main categories wherein a user should employ to get the identification of a given metabolite or a given small molecule, right? Now let's go to the last part of the session, data analysis perspective. That is the most important aspect. Now in this particular slide, slide 49, I am trying to show the different kinds of small molecules. So different classes, in fact, the so-called known, unknown. So all that I want to tell you is known, expected, which means known, unexpected, known, unknowns, known, and unknown, which means what does known means? You know that this is the molecule. You just want to confirm it. That is known. What is known, unknown? You are injecting a molecule. You are expecting something else, but it is not there. However, there is some other molecule in the sample, but the knowledge about that given molecule is available in the database, in the repository. So that is called known unknown. You can still identify the unexpected molecule. That's called known unknown. Now let's go to unknown known. What does unknown known means? You are expecting some molecule, some parent compound, precursor. However, that is not there. At the same time, it is not a different parent. You end up identifying it to be an analog of that parent or a truncated version, partially cleaved, partially processed version. Metabolites, they occur as their precursor, biologically active form, or their intermediate form, right? So you end up identifying one of these forms. So that is the unknown knowns. Last is unknown unknown. What does unknown unknown? Neither you expect it, nor it is there in the knowledge base, database. So those are the unknown unknown. In such cases, you need to employ de novo identification. That is where we will be employing MS1, MS2, isotope structure, everything, right? So these are the different classes of molecules that one should anticipate in a given sample. So this particular slide essentially explains whatever I told you in the last table. Let us skip this slide. We'll go to the next slide. Slide 51. So this particular slide explains the schematic of the metabolite or the small molecule identification workflow. Right from left to right, you either apply LC or GC based MS approach, followed by peak detection, annotation, and statistics, of course. And the important thing is just try to have a critical look at the softwares. So these are the different softwares that has been employed to arrive at this kind of a logic or the data. Right. Before going into the actual data aspect, I want to pitch on two important parameters, or in fact terminologies. One is feature. What does a feature means? Distinct M by Z identified as at a distinct retention time. That is called feature. You can see here 219 is a feature that is identified at 6.3 retention time. This is feature. Now let's go to the next slide. In this slide, it is essentially the same one, 219. However, in addition to 219, in the same retention time, 6.3, you are seeing other peaks. So what are these other peaks? So now let's go to the next slide. If you see this one, these are nothing but adducts, solvent adducts sodium adducts, potassium adducts. Essentially, it is the same molecule along with all the adduct population. So this is called feature assembly. Why are we doing this? Ultimately, our logic objective is to identify the compound, right? So what does a compound means? Compound means it is the cumulative or combinatorial, expression of all of these features. So essentially, we are supposed to identify a compound, not just bunch of features. So whatever we are reporting in publications, it is list of compounds. It is not list of features. If we end up reporting list of features, it is basically redundant information, duplicate information. So essentially what we are identifying the compounds. And compound can be identified either as the precursor mass, actual mass, or the precursor plus the adduct mass. That is what has been explained in these last 2 or 3 slides, right? Now let's go to the next slide. What are the challenges, right? What are the challenges that one should anticipate, one would encounter when we are trying to do metabolite or the metabolomic kind of a experiment? So these are the different challenges. They could be structurally or physically very diverse. The dynamic range, it could be very low abundant as compared to high abundant molecules in the same sample. They could be isobaric. That's what we saw in the earlier session. There could be electrospray artifacts, background ions, and of course, the choice of softwares, choice of repositories, choice of algorithms. So all these things, they together contribute to the analytical challenge that one should anticipate when they're analyzing a metabolite sample or a metabolomic project. So in the next slide, I will only pitch upon the 3 important aspects, the electrospray and the choice of algorithm and the isobaric species, right? So that is what it is. So this particular slide, we are trying to see what are the things that would contribute to the complexity of the spectra, all the adducts, and then what kind of information that is required. Do you need MSMS or do you need to go beyond MSMS? And then the statistics and the sort of algorithms that are being employed to get the annotation, identification. So let's go to the next slide. All right. So all those 3 challenges will be addressed in the subsequent slide, the so-called data analysis using the software aspect. First one will be on the untargeted metabolomics or the so-called global metabolomics. So in this particular slide, slide 58, how is this identification attained? All this logic, you saw it in the earlier slides, either based on MS1, isotope information, MSMS, or structural elucidation based on the isotopic abundance. So all these things we saw in the earlier sessions. So these parameters will be employed, will be extrapolated by the software to give you the ID, right? And this is the workflow which explains how this identification process happens. The 3 important approaches, I would say, the compound annotation or the class-based structural annotation. The final one is the sequential fragmentation, MSN, MS, MSMS, MS3, MS4, MS5, up to MS10. That's what is called MSN, sequential fragmentation, fragment of a fragment, right? All right. So in the next 2 slides or 3 slides, I'll be explaining you how this thing actually happens. So in this particular slide, you can see there is a mass of 205. So as I told you in the earlier slides, we are trying to assemble all the associated masses, all the associated features of 205, right? So it could be ammonia loss, it could be sodium adduct, anything. One thing I want you guys to have a critical look is, if you see the second and the third isotopes, they almost have 2 or 3 components, which means they correspond to the C13 as well as N15, C13 as well as O18. So all of the isotope informations are also simultaneously attained. So together it corresponds to the feature assembly of this particular mass 205. In total, we get 17 related features. Among them, there are 6 adduct ions and 11 isotopes. Now let's go to the next slide. In the next slide, what we are doing, we are blasting that spectral plot against a given software through a repository. In this particular case, it is ChemSpider. In ChemSpider, you are getting 12 hits for this particular mass, and this is the predicted formula. So from this, we are able to see, okay, this is kind of tryptophan. So the top 3 hits corresponds to the tryptophan. It could be DL or L, kind of tryptophan, right? So now let's go to the next slide. In the next slide, we need to confirm, yes, indeed, it is tryptophan. In order to confirm it, we are fragmenting it. we are fragmenting it and we are trying to confirm fragment versus fragment, right? It is not theoretical digestion. It is fragment versus spectral library digestion. So we are comparing a fragment versus fragment to confirm the identity. So this is how we end up confirming the identity of a given small molecule. Let's go to the next slide. What if there is no match? Luckily, it is a tryptophan. In earlier slides, it is a known molecule. So we end up identifying it. But what if there is no match? So that is where we employ this kind of algorithms. MZ Cloud, MZ Logic, or Mass Frontier kind of softwares to decipher, to elucidate the unknown molecule structural information. How is it being attained? We'll be seeing it in the next couple of slides. Let's go to this slide. So currently we are in slide 66. So what we are doing is, if you could see this particular plot, this schematics in the right hand side panel, here we are essentially trying to combine ChemSpider, the one that you saw in earlier slide for tryptophan, and MZ Cloud. So here what we are trying to do, we are trying to arrive at as many possible structural combinations as possible. So this will give you the putative candidates, the expected or the suspected candidates. Now let's go to the next slide. So in this particular slide, we are getting the combination. So these are the expected or suspected formula combinations, structural formula combinations. That is more important. So if you see, all of them, they share the same mass. How do we confirm this? So let's go to the next slide. The next slide, MZ Logic. So now we are moving beyond ChemSpider. In the earlier session, tryptophan, we sticked only with ChemSpider. Now here it is ChemSpider plus MZ Logic algorithm. So here what it does, it is trying to show you all the possible substructures, right? So all these substructures will together contribute to the structure of this given molecule, given unknown molecule. So here all the possible substructures are being shown. So now let's go to the next slide. So ultimately you will end up that, okay, this particular structure has phenylalanine component, right? So that we'll be able to get by the fragmentation information. And of course with the mass accuracy. So once we combine the spectral fragment information together, we will be able to elucidate, okay, it is glycine phenylalanine dipeptide, 2 amino acid dipeptide. So that is what we are trying to elucidate. So that is how we come to a conclusion about a given metabolite structure. So this thing we were able to do it by combining both ChemSpider and MZ Logic structure wise. Part by part, we have solved the structure. So this is the logic. So now let's go to the next slide. So in this particular slide, if you see, it is essentially the same. So the left hand side, we are able to get it. Right hand side, what if we don't get it? In that cases, we can also employ the information from the other publicly available database, like say HMDB, KEGG, BioSig, PubChem. All these things can be coupled to the software, the Compound Discoverer software, right? Let's go to the next slide. So in this particular slide, I'm just trying to show how I'm going to filter it out. So assume that we are getting 441 candidates by combining both ChemSpider and the MZ Logic algorithm. What we'll do, we will again filter it out, and we are getting these two possible combinations, structural combinations. So what is the actual correct structure? So in order to do that, we are essentially employing the same logic. I mean, combining ChemSpider and MZ Logic. In this case, we absolutely have no information about the substructures. We are going to literally plot the substructures. In the earlier case, we know the information about the substructures. I mean, we know part of it is phenylalanine, part of it is glycine, right? So there is some information that is available. We were only combining the information, combining the structures. In this case, there is no such information that is available. What we will do, what we are going to do is, we are going to compare this unknown MSMS fragment with the MZ Cloud, the most similar compound. And we will be able to pull out, if you see, this is similar to this 70. 127 is similar to this one, right? 155 is similar to this one. So we are trying to head-to-head compare the spectral, MSMS spectral information with the MZ Cloud available spectral information that is from some other compound, not from the same compound. It is a similar compound. So thereby we are able to see, okay, this has this structure, this has this structure, and this one. Other things are not present. So we are essentially trying to plot the top spectral plot. This is our experimental data. This is there in the software. So by doing this, we will be able to arrive at, okay, so this is the structure, right? So this complete structure will fragment and yield this data. However, this structure, if it fragments, it will yield this data. This is how we compare and arrive at the unknown molecule structure. As simple as that, right? So that is how we do it actually. And in this session, so this is about the, again with the ChemSpider. I don't want to invest too much time on it. I'm sure by now like this is how we do in ChemSpider, MS, MS, and structure-based thing. Let us not invest time. This particular slide, it shows the screenshot of the mzcloud.org. It is a publicly available website and it is freely available. So you can always feel free to log in and you can try to gather all this information, spectral information, all these things can be retrieved from this one. And this particular slide is about MS3. So I was talking about MS2, MS3, right? So MS3, we are essentially employing to, differentiate isomers, structural isomers. In this case, it is the flavonoid isomers that is being discriminated at the MS3 level. Wherever we are able to differentiate the structural isoform or the isomer, that is being plotted using the green color arrow mark. So this is how we employ MS2, MS3 to differentiate structural isomers. They are isobaric at MS1 level. However, at MS3 level, we are able to differentiate it, not at MS2 level. That is the difference. So this particular slide, slide 80, again, it essentially explains the same, the benefit of sequential fragmentation, MSN. So in the earlier slide, I showed you example of MS2, MS3. In this slide, we are showing up to MS7. So these are different glycan isomers. If you see here in the left-hand side table, so these are the MS2. At MS2 level, we are not able to discriminate them. So let us do one more level of fragmentation, MS3. So at MS3, we are able to discriminate population 1 from 2 and 3. However, 2 and 3, they are same, 1, 6, 2, 3. So again, we are doing one more level of fragmentation. So at almost at the MS4 level, we are able to discriminate all the 3 structural isomers. So this is where MS2, MS3, MS4, this kind of MSN kind of information is very, very important to differentiate, elucidate structural isomers. And this is the complete workflow. And here you can see the kind of softwares, Compound Discoverer, mzCloud, TraceFinder, Lipid Search. These are the different softwares that is being employed to arrive at this kind of identification. And this is just to summarize. So I'm sure by now you know the importance of mass accuracy, the kind of information that we get, the importance of isotopic pattern, resolution, MS-MS fragmentation, sequential fragmentation. So all these are very important to arrive at the small molecule identification, at the same time quantitation, right? And this is just to conclude. So small molecule annotation, it is greatly enhanced by the high quality, high resolution, accurate mass Orbitrap MS data. So accurate mass spectra and isotope fine structure, they provide very good confidence on the identification of the elemental composition. So multiple measurements, they provide critical evidence to increase the confidence of the given compound annotation. And LC-MS2 data, it also provides the highest probability of the matching library spectra. So these things essentially shows how one should plan or design a metabolite or a small molecule experiment, as simple as that, employing Orbitrap mass spectrometry. And we should not forget the importance of front-end chromatography. So that is what is shown in this particular slide. If you see, this is a complete KIG pathway, the biological pathway. So the red ones means they are identified by reverse phase chromatography followed by positive polarity, ESI. Now the purple ones corresponds to highly chromatography followed by positive polarity, ESI. The orange one, it corresponds to the reverse phase negative polarity, ESI. Blue one, highly negative polarity, ESI. Green one, ion chromatography, negative polarity, ESI. black one, gas chromatography in combination with either chemical ionization or electron ionization. So these are the different kinds of front-end chromatography one should employ in combination with different polarity within a given mass spectrometer to identify the maximum possible metabolomic pathway. So this is just for your information. So with this, I would like to conclude. Thank you for your patience. If there are any questions, I will be happy to answer.
Thank you, sir. So the next question is by Serena D'Souza. You have elaborated the data analysis procedure and how spectra fragmentation helps in depth analysis. And how can we ensure we are running the correct settings for our compound?
Yeah, that is a good one. Like say, when it comes to the Orbitrap MS, you don't have to really fine tune the instrument, right? The general parameters itself will fit in most of the compounds. Only in certain cases, we might have to play with the spray voltage, and then we might have to play with the mass range. Other than that, like say, most of the parameters are global. It should be applicable for most of the small molecules. Very in rarest case, you might have to do compound wise optimization. So you don't have to worry about the parameter settings in the instrument, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. One more question by Serena D'Souza. Since there are libraries and software which are able to decipher and identify the analyte, is there a need to have standard for the analyte of interest?
So to be honest with you guys, it is better you have a standard, right? If you have a standard, you can do both qualitative identity confirmation and quantitation. But if your objective is to only identify a given molecule, you don't have to have a standard. Simple. So if you want to arrive at the absolute concentration, absolute abundance of a given molecule in a given sample, in a biological sample or a synthetic sample, then it is better to have a standard. But if the objective is to only arrive at the qualitative information identity, you don't need to have any standards. That is the logic.
Okay, thank you, sir. So there are few more questions from our side. If the objective is to trace isotope tracing from labeled glucose as well as glutamine, such that both leads to production of lactate, will it be possible for such isotope tracing?
Okay, this is some sort of isotope tracing experiment, right? So
Yes.
yeah, this is pretty much possible. The challenge would be the sample extraction. In mass spec, it is possible, but how are you trying to enrich a given isotope population in the given sample? Like say, it will be a time point kind of an experiment. So you are using an isotope labeled metabolite. That particular isotope labeled metabolite, it's getting transformed through some sort of an enzyme driven, chemical driven mechanism. So how are you trying to arrest these things, and how are you trying to enrich selectively the isotope components from each of the reaction pathway? So that is the challenge. The challenge is on the sample extraction part, but in the mass spec, yes, it can be done. It's not a problem.
Okay, thank you, sir. That's a very interesting one. One more. If we want to check TCA intermediates, then do we need to spike label TCA intermediate as well?
If you have it, yes, it is good. Because by spiking it, you can use the spiked sample for normalizing the data. By having a spiked standard, you can also be able to identify a very low abundant molecule. So spiking helps actually, but if you don't have if it's costly and if you don't have it, then it is okay. The problem is that it purely depends how much time you are able to invest. Time in the wet lab, time in the instrument. So I have time to invest in my wet lab component. Then you need to plan it accordingly. Vice versa. I have time to invest in my instrument component. Then you can plan it accordingly. If you have very good instrument time, then you can literally do multiple injections and then trace each and every TCA intermediate. But if you don't have instrument time, then you have to plan it accordingly in the wet lab part. That is where we end up spiking the suspected TCA intermediates. That is the logic.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. And one more question, is the software compound discover capable of detecting and differentiating a label and label metabolite?
As a user, you have to define it in the search strategy. So you are saying that it is we are suspecting to have C13 labeled isotope component or the counterpart of the given molecule. This has to be fed in the search program, search strategy. If it is fed, it can be done.
Okay, thank you, sir. One more question. It is from the Dr. D.N. Rout. For natural product, how is it useful to find out unknown compounds?
Yeah, that is a good one. Yes, for natural product chemistry, people are using the Arbitrap kind of instrument in combination with Compound Discoverer, MZ Cloud or MZ Logic, at the same time Mass Frontier. So the challenge with natural compounds is that you don't have all of the compounds deposited in the public repositories. So thereby you have to build in silico structures, right? So I had showed you some of the spectral structure, the spectra and the structure. So that sort of a groundwork has to be done. In order to do that groundwork, we need a software called Mass Frontier. It comes in combination with Compound Discoverer. So we need to build in the in silico structure, fragment structures of the suspected, food molecules. Then we can use that as a library to confirm the identity in the given sample. That is how it should be done.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. Yeah, one more over here. How to differentiate derivatized molecule in GCMS analysis?
Obviously with mass, right? It is pretty much doable. In GCMS, in most of the samples, like it will be passed through derivatized string. It is obviously through the mass difference. And if you have a, even a basic software, that will do it.
Okay, thank you, sir. One more, the interesting one. For metal complexes, what mass technique we should follow to get mass spectrum? It is from the Dr. Narendra Kumar Chaudhary.
Okay, metal, molecules that have metal things, right? It is pretty difficult to ionize. I would say you should, consider evaluating couple of ionization principles, MALDI based, at the same time ESA based. So metal clusters, they come a bit better in MALDI based techniques. So you should consider doing it there. So the ionization is the challenge in metal cluster containing compounds. So in MALDI, you get two-step ionization. So ionization at the matrix level, ionization when it has been ablated by the laser. Whereas in ESA, it is a single step ionization process. So MALDI might help you or else you should try with ESA. That's how it should be.
Okay, thank you, sir. One more. How Q executive HF differ from Orbitrap fusion? The question is by Bittu.
The difference is that Q Exactive HF, it is the benchtop instrument. It has ultra high field Orbitrap, and it has only one fragmentation technique, HCD, high energy collision dissociation. Orbitrap fusion, it also has ultra high field Orbitrap. However, it has three different fragmentation techniques. It has CID, it has HCD, it also has ETD. This is difference number one. Difference number two, Q Exactive HF, it cannot do beyond MS2. You can do MS and MSMS. Whereas in Orbitrap fusion, you can do MS, MSMS, MS3 up to MS10. That is the difference.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, last but not the least, for the question is for whole plant metabolomics, which online library we should use? The question is by Ashok Panda.
Plant metabolomics is a big challenge, I would say. So you try to use as much as information from different repositories. So you don't have one repository for plant metabolites, I would say. So you need to use, like say, from plant biosec, and you may also consider using synthetic sources. So plant metabolome is, it's very huge. You need to use all of the available repository information. There is no one-stop shop, unfortunately, as of now at least.
Okay, thank you, sir. One more question by the same user. How to compare M by Z information from ESI positive and ESI negative data to obtain structural information of small molecules?
The so-called ESI positive and negative, it means it corresponds to the polarity. Some molecules, they tend to protonate, readily protonate, accept hydrogen. Some molecules, they readily tend to release hydrogen, deprotonate. So the choice of polarity depends on the affinity of the molecule for protons, right? So this will only give you the information about the isotopic abundance at MS1 level. However, for structural elucidation, polarity followed by fragmentation. That is what is important. That is how we need to do it.
Okay, thank you, sir.
We are grateful to you, sir, for answering the questions. On behalf of SEF CRNTS, I would like to thank Dr. Saravanan Kumar for interesting talk on delineating small molecule analysis through ultra-high resolution Orbitrap mass spectrometry. I would like to thank our head, Professor Anil Kotantharil, and our IT team member, Mrs. Nidhi Goyal and Mr. Jagdeep Singh for their continued support in this webinar series. And last but not the least, I thank all the participants for attending this webinar and making this event successful. A link for the feedback form is shared in the question and answer section. Please do fill the form. Your valuable inputs are important to us. We are pleased to inform you that we have one more webinar on proteomics, which is on 21st of October by Dr. Saravanan Kumar. The registration link for next webinar on laser Raman imaging, a correlative microscopic technique, a tool for advanced material characterization by Mr. Hitesh Bamge is now open on our website. I request you all to join us for our next talk. Once again, thank you all for attending this webinar and making it successful. Stay healthy and stay safe. Thank you.